8 shadowed rifle barrels, 1 woman without a weapon. 57 heartbeats later, every shooter was out of play. No shots fired, no brute force. Just a maneuver they never even saw forming. The last thing they heard before the world fell into silence, "I expected better from you." At Fort Wexler, dawn brought that peculiar cocktail of scents. Every baseborn soul knows jet exhaust tangled with sharp pine, cut through by the metallic edge of diesel and the dry tang of sun-baked cement. It was the promise of another day that would test the limits of skin, steel, and patience. Staff Sergeant Arden Veyra stepped down from the transport bus, the cracked tarmac beneath her already breathing heat into her soles. The faded paint lines, blackened oil spots, and deep scuffs told a decades-long story of machines, heavier than houses coming and going. Somewhere past the concrete hangars, a steady cadence of voices and boots from the morning PT run carried on the breeze, the base's pulse beating in time with tradition. Before I tell you how a single unarmed woman dismantled an entire sniper element, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been cornered so completely that even you believed you were finished? A moment when every advantage was stacked against you. Until it wasn't? Share that story in the comments. I read them all. And if you find strength in these accounts of quiet, unseen warriors as much as I do, tap that thanks button. Every bit of support keeps these untold moments alive, the ones proving that the fiercest power doesn't always roar. Now let's see what unfolds when you back into a corner. Someone who's forgotten more about precision shooting than most will ever learn. Arden Veyra crossed the training yard with the unhurried certainty of a woman who'd spent 15 years in uniform. Her woodland pattern fatigues were textbook regulation, though the fit left a touch of looseness in the sleeves and legs. At her right hip, a well-cared-for sidearm rested naturally. Standard issue, nothing fancy. The way she moved carried the kind of understated authority that came after years of proving herself, and no longer needing to. But her eyes? They were in constant motion. Guard towers, weapon ranges, choke points, exits. Residual habits from places where a missed detail didn't mean a bad grade, it meant a body bag. The armory smelled of CLP oil, cold steel, and that ever-present industrial cleaner that tried and failed to cover the lingering scent of ego and competition. Behind the wire mesh counter, 6 men in deep navy combat shirts gathered in a loose knot. Their conversation was punctuated with the kind of laughter that made it clear the target of the joke wasn't standing in their circle. Gunnery Sergeant Cole Madrick was the first to notice her. Broad-shouldered, sandy-haired, built like a recruitment billboard, with pale eyes that sized people up in a single sweep. Asset or liability, nothing in between. His gaze swept over her quickly, the admin insignia, the faint limp, the small adjustment she made to her glasses. Well, look what the logistics chain dragged in," he announced, his voice pitched to Carrie. "Let's hope she knows which end the bullets come out of." His teammates chuckled, the easy, practiced camaraderie of men who'd spent months side by side, finishing each other's jabs and reinforcing their belief that their circle was unbreakable. Corporal Trevin Holt, stocky with carved cheekbones and hands like forged clamps, leaned casually on the counter. "Don't worry, Gunny," he said. "We'll keep her out of trouble. Make sure she doesn't lace her boots together by accident or send a round through her own foot." Private First Class Ezra Shade Moreno, barely 6 months out of sniper school but already wearing his call sign like armor, gave a jittery laugh that bounced in time with the slight rocking of his feet. "Maybe we should issue her a beginner's guide. Weapons handling for non-shooters. Bet they don't cover live fire in the supply cages." Arden didn't take the bait. She'd heard different versions of the same chorus in 6 countries and twice as many dialects. Without a word, she signed for an M4, slid it across the counter, and began her inspection. Chamber clear, sight alignment, sling tension. Her hands moved with the unconscious speed and accuracy of someone for whom a mechanical failure once meant the difference between breathing and bleeding out. "Careful there, hotshot," called Corporal Riker Danis from behind her. Lean, wiry, the team's spotter, his eyes missed nothing. Those training rounds won't bite unless you aim them right. And judging by that admin patch, that might be a tall order. Lance Corporal Nyla Sarin tapped at her tactical smartwatch, a special operations model with biometric telemetry, capable of tracking everything from heart rate variability to cortisol spikes. She'd used its real-time readouts to keep team movements in sync during field ops. "I could pull you up a how-to video if you're feeling rusty, ma'am." She'd been issued access to every standard training packet the facility had, but paper didn't make you a shooter. The only woman in their crew, Sergeant Kira Ashmore, hadn't spoken yet. Her gaze followed Arden Veyra's rifle inspection with a hawk's focus, a subtle shift in her expression as Arden cycled the action with quick, deliberate precision. But camaraderie among the others outweighed her own observation. "Ease up, guys," Kira said dryly. "She probably hasn't handled anything deadlier than a clipboard in a long time." Arden finished the inspection, clipped the sling across her chest, and replied in a tone as flat as a map, "We'll see soon enough." She moved toward the briefing room without a backward glance. The statement wasn't bait. Wasn't defensive, just matter of fact, but it somehow silenced them for a moment. Behind her, she caught Cole Madrek's low voice, pitched just under what he assumed she couldn't hear. 20 says she freezes the first time someone shoves her. "I'll match it," Ezra Shade Moreno added. "Double it if she tears up before we're halfway through quals." Arden didn't slow. She'd been dismissed by sharper men than this lot, and their underestimation had never lasted long. Letting them cling to their assumptions was the smarter play. Reality would sort it out soon enough. The faint hitch in her gait, barely noticeable unless you were looking, came courtesy of shrapnel that tore into her hip 5 years back. The glasses were new, prescribed after the surgery that followed. She shot just fine with them. Those details? Not for sharing, not yet. The briefing room was really a converted storage. Hangar, concrete slab underfoot, exposed rafters above, folding tables shoved to the perimeter to make space for rows of hard plastic chairs. Along one wall, a whiteboard crowded with marker-scrawled diagrams mapped out the day's drill. An urban breach and clear scenario in one of Wexler's warehouse mock-ups, built to mimic anything from tight Middle Eastern alleys to blocky Eastern European apartments. Arden took a second-row seat, a spot where she could study both the instructor and the room itself. Around her, the trainees clustered into service-based camps. You could spot their affiliations by the tilt of their shoulders, the patches they wore, the grip they kept on their weapons. Army with Army, Marines with Marines. A couple of Air Force combat controllers quietly stationed in the far back. The 6 snipers had claimed their territory toward the rear, sprawled out like they owned the place. Cole Madrek lounged with his boots up on the seat ahead, his voice carrying as he dispensed what sounded like gospel to his crew. Every so often, a pair of eyes would flick in Arden's direction, smirking. At precisely 0600, Major Donovan Strail strode in, tall, silver-streaked hair, and a presence that shut down chatter without the need for volume. Strail had overseen this course for 3 years and carried the weight of someone who'd seen every breed of ego and bravado the services could turn out. Her eyes swept the room, held on Arden for a second, then moved on. "Morning, warriors. Today we measure how well you adapt when the plan falls apart. 4-person breach teams, timed, simunition rounds." She tapped the whiteboard with the end of her pointer. "These won't kill you, but they'll bite and leave you marked. Show them respect." Arden jotted notes as her mind began overlaying the warehouse layout with experience. Muscle memory recalling 100 variations of the same drill, some in sterile training grounds, others in places where the return fire was live and unforgiving, multiple ingress points, blind corners deliberately engineered to funnel attackers into kill zones, and a primary target deep inside that demanded coordinated movement to secure me, the kind of setup designed to punish hesitation. Halfway through Major Donovan Strail's briefing, Cole Madrek lifted his hand with the slow assurance of someone used to steering conversations toward his own agenda. "Ma'am," he began, the surface-level respect in his tone unable to hide the glint of self-satisfaction underneath. "Since we're testing adaptability under pressure today, how about we give the Army rep here an added layer of difficulty?" The chatter in the room died instantly. Strail halted mid-sentence, turning her gaze on him, the kind of stare that could take the heat out of a forge. "What kind of difficulty, Gunnery Sergeant?" Madrek's grin was wide but carried no warmth. "Pull her weapons! Let her run it barehanded. See how she works when she doesn't have her comfort zone strapped to her shoulder. In real operations, you don't always get to walk in armed." The suggestion lingered in the air, heavy as smoke from a bad burn. Several trainees shifted in their seats, not out of agreement, but because this wasn't training protocol. It was hazing dressed up as tactical innovation. Corporal Traven Holt leaned forward, voice joining the push. "Could be solid practice, ma'am. Sometimes you hit a target before you've got your rifle in hand. Besides, everyone knows logistics folks aren't exactly knee-deep in firefights. Might be a learning moment." Lance Corporal Nyla Sarin gave a slow nod, idly tapping something on her advanced smartwatch, likely unrelated, before adding, "We could even pull stress response data. Strictly for training analysis, of course. The low snickers from Ezra Shade Moreno and Riker Danis didn't need context. Kira Ashmore kept her face neutral, but Arden Veyra caught the faint tightening around her eyes. She knew it was wrong, but loyalty to her squad outweighed speaking up. Arden didn't shift in her seat. She let her pen hover over her notebook, expression unreadable, while her mind began running probability trees. This wasn't about tactics. It was about 6 operators, who'd decided her quiet capability was a threat to their pecking order, who saw her admin patch and her slight limp as proof she didn't belong. They wanted to break her in front of 40 other service members. "That's not how this drill is structured," she said evenly, eyes on Stryla. "This is a timed breach exercise, not unarmed combat. Removing weapons alters the parameters entirely." Madrek's smile spread. "Exactly. If you can pull your weight without a weapon, that says something, doesn't it? Unless you're worried you can't keep up without your crutch." The word crutch seemed to hang in the room. Arden's fingers closed just slightly around her pen. Somewhere in her mind, a locked door shifted. And with it came fragments, scorching sand, the smell of cordite, the weight of being the only barrier between teammates and a bullet they never saw. Strail's jaw tightened. She'd dealt with Madrek's type before, men, who thought rules were for other people, who equated arrogance with talent. But she also knew the unspoken politics of joint training. Marine Special Operations carried influence here. "This is irregular," she said at last. "Parameters exist for a reason." "With respect," Madrek pressed, sensing her hesitation. "Isn't the point of joint training to test limits? See how we react to the unexpected?" His eyes flicked toward Arden, the disdain barely hidden. "Even support personnel should appreciate that." The insult was sharp in its subtlety. Not a soldier. Not a real operator, just logistics staff playing dress-up for a day. Arden kept the flare of heat in her chest under control. They didn't know who they were dealing with. They couldn't. Her records were locked away, behind layers of clearance they'd never touch. To them, she was just Staff Sergeant Arden Veyra, logistics coordinator. Nothing special. "All right," Strail said finally, caught between doctrine and diplomacy. "We'll run it once. If it's a problem, we change it. Sergeant Veyra, hand over your weapons. You're running unarmed." The order cut through the hangar like a clean blade. Saying no would brand her insubordinate in front of 50 witnesses. Agreeing would hand those 6 smug operators the satisfaction of thinking they'd just won. Refusing would have its own cost. Arden Veyra rose slowly, every motion deliberate, measured. She lifted her M4 from the table beside her and carried it forward, aware of dozens of eyes tracking her steps. Her sidearm followed, leaving her holster conspicuously empty, her options cut down in an instant. She placed both weapons on the table with controlled precision, not slamming them down, but making it obvious this wasn't capitulation. It was strategy. When she returned to her seat, the 6 scout snipers looked like they'd just been handed a free pass to the finals. Traven Holt leaned toward Ezra Shade Moreno, muttering something that drew a shared laugh. A pair of younger soldiers across the room exchanged uneasy glances that all but said she was about to get chewed up. One Army private even looked like he pitied her. But pity wasn't enough to make him step in against 6 Marines. Major Donovan Strail wrapped the briefing with less enthusiasm than she'd started. "Warehouse 7, 10 minutes. Full kit, no weapons for Sergeant Veyra. Move." As chairs scraped and boots scuffed toward the exit, Cole Madrek brushed close enough to murmur, "Hope you've been stretching, Sergeant. You'll need every ounce of flexibility. Once you're running from 6 trained killers." She didn't give him a glance. Her mind was already recalibrating, recalling joint locks, pain compliance points, improvised weapon tactics, and every way to turn an opponent's strength into their downfall. If they wanted a live demo, she'd give them one to remember. The route to Warehouse 7 took them over a shimmering strip of morning-heated tarmac. Arden walked alone, with a bubble of space around her as though failure might be contagious. Behind, the 6 Marines bantered, their overconfidence growing with each step. "Hey, Veyra," Shade called. No shame in bowing out early. "Medical's right there." "Leave her be," Kira Ashmore said flatly, though without much conviction. "She'll figure out soon this isn't a game." Nyla Saren was explaining something to Riker. Danis about the biometric readouts she'd be collecting. Heart rate, cortisol spikes, panic responses. "It's going to be fascinating, seeing the exact moment she unravels," she said almost cheerfully. Nyla Saren was explaining something to Riker. Danis about the biometric readouts she'd be collecting. Heart rate, cortisol spikes, panic responses. "It's going to be fascinating, seeing the exact moment she unravels," she said almost cheerfully. Arden's fingers brushed the smooth casing of the device in her pocket. Not officially a weapon, just a field testing tool she'd checked out from supply. The fact it could emit disorienting ultrasonic bursts was pure happenstance. Same as the small mirrors in her cargo pocket, useful for peeking blind corners. And the smoke canister? Just overlooked training stock, obviously. Warehouse 7 loomed ahead. A hulking steel shell turned into a labyrinth with plywood partitions, hallways twisting into choke points and kill zones. Fluorescent tubes hummed above, shadows twitching with every step. On the observation deck above, spectators filed in, drawn by the whispered buzz that had already run through. Fort Wexler, an Army logistics sergeant going in unarmed against 6. Marine Scout snipers. Some were genuinely curious. Others just wanted front row seats to a crash and burn. The Marines prepped with the easy certainty of men who believed they'd already won. Madrek slammed a mag home harder than necessary, the sharp click punctuating the air. Holt rolled his shoulders like he was loosening muscles that didn't need it. Saren glanced at her smartwatch again, scrolling through what looked like a live vitals feed. Shade and Danis bumped fists. Ashmore adjusted her sling in smooth, economical movements. "Don't get lost in there, Veyra," Holt called over his shoulder. "Wouldn't want you missing the fun." Arden crouched at the staging mat, pulling on her gloves with exacting care. She didn't respond. She didn't need to. Her focus was on details the others had missed entirely. How burned-out bulbs left pockets of shadow, how the map they'd been given left certain corners suspiciously ambiguous. The plywood panels gave slightly under pressure in certain spots, telling her they weren't reinforced properly. Some of the Marines' gear broadcasted their presence without them realizing it. Madrek's mag pouches gave a telltale clink when he shifted. Saren's smartwatch vibrated faintly every half-minute. Shade's left boot had a faint squeak on each step. Unarmed, she was, on paper, at a crushing disadvantage. But paper theories meant nothing once the clock started. Every scrap of equipment those 6 carried could become a weapon in skilled hands. Every ounce of smug certainty was a fault line she could split wide open. Every assumption about her supposed helplessness was just more ammo for her to fire back. Major Strail's voice barked through the loudspeaker. "Team Alpha, stack on the entry. Scenario begins at my signal. Target is the green crate center room. 3 minutes on the clock." The snipers assembled with parade ground precision. Madrek took point, rifle up and ready. Holt covered the right lane. Saren and Shade formed the center. Danis guarded their rear. Ashmore floated on the perimeter, ready to pivot to any angle. Veyra was placed 10 paces behind their formation, close enough to count, far enough to be meaningless once they breached the kill house. Up in the observation deck, whispers carried down through the echoes. 57 seconds tops. She'll be lucky to last half that. Another voice followed. 4 on 1's bad enough. 6 on 0 brutal. Arden's stance settled low, breathing measured and quiet. She'd seen rooms like this before, except the walls had been sun-baked mud brick, and the aftermath measured in body bags, not bruised egos. She knew how fast control shifted, when violence became the only language left in the room. The countdown hit. 3, 2, 1. The whistle's shriek cut the air. The 6 surged forward like a single body, or at least they believed they did. Arden didn't follow their wake. Instead, she angled left, hugging the wall, cutting for the first choke point before they'd even cleared the door. Her movement was fluid, deliberate, sound minimized, speed preserved. The first corridor allowed barely 2 across. Madrek scanned left and right with machine-etched precision. Holt shadowed him tight, the rest holding their gaps. They moved like they'd drilled it. Endlessly, probably had, against opponents who played their same game. Arden let them commit fully to the lane, then bled into their wake like smoke curling into still air. No sudden moves, no noise, just shrinking the space between them. A flaw their pattern didn't cover. Saren's smartwatch buzzed faintly. Madrek still favored his left leg. Old injury, maybe. Shade kept glancing back, but never far enough to see her. 20 seconds in, the lead element cut left into the mock alley, a thin stretch broken by doorways and dark windows. Shade took the turn without checking his rear, his focus pulled forward. In real combat, that was the kind of oversight that got people zipped into bags. Here, it just got you humiliated. Arden moved, no wasted flair, just the stripped-down economy of someone who knew extra motion was a liability. Her left hand smothered Shade's barrel, right clamping his wrist with surgical pressure. A tight torque against his shoulder joint lit nerves like live wire, breaking his grip. She didn't fight his momentum, she stole it, pulling him down hard onto the padded flooring. Air exploded from him in a ragged wheeze. Before his brain could catch up, she had his rifle in her hands. Chamber checked in a blink, stepping over him without pause. 32 seconds. Danis heard the thud, spun, and froze for a beat at the sight of her holding Shade's weapon. His rifle came up on instinct, but she was already inside his firing arc before he could sight her. The seized rifle hooked behind his knee, and a sudden pull wrecked his balance. Momentum took over, doing the rest. He slammed into the mat with a jolt that echoed through the mock structure. Arden dropped a knee into his sternum, firm enough to immobilize, careful enough to avoid real damage. Her other hand locked against his carotid, applying perfect textbook choke pressure. Danis's palm slapped at the floor in quick, urgent taps, the universal surrender. She released instantly, shoving his weapon back toward him as she stood. No taunts, no theatrics, just clean, efficient violence and forward motion. 45 seconds. Madrek was starting to register that his flawless plan had fractured beyond repair. He pivoted toward her, forcing his rifle into position in the corridor's tight confines. But the same narrow hall meant to favor the attackers now worked against him. The weapon's length turned into a hindrance, awkward, slow, trapped by the space. Arden shifted right, letting his forward push carry him too far. Her left foot hooked his ankle as her shoulder rammed into his ribs. Timing plus physics, devastating in combination. Madrek hit the plywood wall hard enough to make it shudder. The rifle slipped free as he instinctively reached out to brace himself. Arden snatched it mid-drop, rolled it into a ready hold, and leveled it at his chest before he'd drawn another breath. He froze, his expression flickering from disbelief to fury, then something resembling reluctant acknowledgement. Behind him, Holt was still trying to process how half his squad had been dismantled in under a minute. 62 seconds. Before Holt could regroup, she'd already drawn his sidearm from its holster, cycled the slide in one seamless motion, and leveled it at his chest from barely a meter away. "Drop it," Arden said quietly, the first words she'd spoken since stepping into the kill house. 73 seconds. That left Saren and Ashmore. Saren had abandoned any illusion of resistance. Hands raised, shoulders tight, she edged back until her spine pressed into the wall. Her smartwatch pulsed erratically on her wrist, no doubt displaying heart rate numbers a medic could write a case study on. Ashmore stood at the mouth of the corridor, rifle lowered, her face unreadable as she took in the wreckage of her team. "Time," Arden called out. "Targets contained." The whistle's shrill note cut the air, sharp, conclusive. The warehouse sank into stillness, the silence settling heavy, broken only by the low hum of the overhead fluorescents and the uneven breathing of four Marine marksmen who had just learned the cost of mistaking certainty for skill. From the catwalk above, applause began, slow, deliberate. The sound rolled across the space, not mocking, but commanding attention with each measured clap. A tall figure in immaculate dress greens descended the steel stairs, silver eagles catching the harsh light. Colonel Barrett Kingswell, commanding officer of Special Operations Training Command, carried himself with the kind of presence that straightened postures without a word. He stopped just short of Arden, his gaze sharp and searching. "Didn't think I'd see Phantom on the floor again," he said. The call sign landed like a physical impact. Madrek's head came up sharply, from where he was still steadying himself against the wall. Holt froze mid-motion. Even Saren's smartwatch seemed to pause its frantic alerts. "Been a while, sir," Arden answered evenly. Kingswell inclined his head toward the scattered Marines still gathering themselves. "Gentlemen," he said, "you might want to know that Staff Sergeant Arden Veyra here once served as the lead, close quarters combat instructor for Joint Task, Force 77, specializing in neutralizing multiple armed threats in confined environments." He let the words hang in the air, giving them time to land. That was, 8 years back? Maybe 10? 10 years, Arden corrected quietly, her voice steady. 10? Kingswell repeated, a subtle smile tugging at the corner of his lips, as if he'd already known the answer. "Which means while some of you were still in high school, Sergeant Veyra was perfecting moves like the ones you just saw." He let his gaze sweep across the warehouse, finally resting on Gunnery Sergeant Cole Madrek. "In fact, Master Gunnery Sergeant, it seems several of your original protocols have quietly made their way into today's sniping curriculum. That non-lethal takedown sequence? Pure phantom doctrine. The change in the sniper's demeanors was instantaneous." Madrek's confidence dissipated like fog under sunlight. Ezra Shade Moreno, still rubbing his shoulder, looked nauseated. Traven Holt swallowed hard, Adam's apple bobbing noticeably. Kingswell stepped closer to Arden, voice carrying to every corner of the warehouse. Staff Sergeant Arden Veyra, former Marine Scout sniper, lead instructor for CQB operations, designer of our current sniper infiltration methods, confirmed neutralizations exceeding the total, operational hours of everyone present, medically discharged after classified operations in Syria due to traumatic brain injury that cost 70% vision in the right eye. The revelation struck like a detonated charge. Kira Ashmore's eyes widened. Nyla Saren's smartwatch finally went silent. Madrek looked as if he'd taken a gut punch. Following the surgery, she enrolled in specialized neuro-rehab programs, Kingswell continued. Courses crafted for cognitive retraining after TBI, blending elite tactical exercises with cutting-edge brain recovery techniques. The compensatory skills she developed made her deadlier with one eye than most snipers with perfect sight. Arden remained silent, letting the accolades roll over her without comment, her expression neutral. Yet subtle signs betrayed the weight she carried. The faint tracing of her fingers along the hip where hidden, shrapnel scars lay beneath her uniform. Phantom! Madrek's voice cracked. Your Phantom? You literally wrote the manual on counter-sniper operations. We studied your after-action reports at Quantico, the Damascus shot. Kandahar Bridge. Arden cut him off. What matters is the lesson. You depended on gear and assumed dominance. The deadliest opponent is the one you underestimate. In real combat, that assumption kills. She strode to the table, methodically returning the rifles she'd taken. Each motion professional, unhurried, devoid of ceremony, just efficiency. Kingswell wasn't done. Gentlemen, I suggest a tour with the cleaning crew. Every mat in this facility could use your attention. Let it serve as a lesson in humility. The 6 Marines accepted the orders in silence. What choice did they have? They'd just been outclassed by a legend they assumed was gone, dismissed because of a logistics patch and a subtle limp. As Arden moved toward the exit, Ashmore caught up. Ma'am, I didn't recognize the techniques at first. I should have. You trained my instructor at Quantico. Arden paused, studying the younger woman for the first time. You've got sharp instincts, Sergeant. You sensed something off. Trust that, even when the group thinks otherwise. Why didn't you speak up? Because respect earned is worth more than respect demanded. And sometimes the most effective lessons sting a little. She adjusted her glasses, a casual gesture that restored the illusion of the harmless. Logistics coordinator she'd been moments ago. Besides, I've been retired 5 years. I just needed to see if I still had it. 57 seconds against 6 of you. The reality hit hard. A logistics coordinator, one with a limp and thick-rimmed glasses, had just neutralized 6 elite snipers in under a minute. The lesson was simple yet profound. Assumptions could kill. Real warriors didn't need to broadcast their skill. Arden Veyra, the Phantom, melted back into her unassuming cover with effortless precision. By tomorrow, she'd be behind her desk again, managing supply manifests, logging shipments, approving requests, everyday logistics work. Her glasses would once again reflect the glow of computer monitors instead of the sights of a rifle scope. Her fingers would tap keyboards instead of pulling triggers. But for those who had witnessed the events in Warehouse 7, Arden would remain an indelible lesson, a living testament that appearances could never measure capability. The slight, seemingly fragile woman with the subtle limp was now unforgettable. They would remember her movements, the way she leveraged every advantage they thought they held, the quiet authority with which she delivered her lesson. In the end, no medal, no commendation, no official recognition could encapsulate the impact. The moment validated a truth only true warriors understand. Even when wounded, even when partially impaired, a real fighter never truly retires. They simply discover new ways to serve. And when the moment demands, they remind everyone what a professional can do, even underestimating eyes. Warehouse 7 returned to silence. The hum of fluorescent lights filling the space, where chaos had reigned only minutes before. Yet the echoes of competence, precision, and quiet dominance lingered far longer than any gunshot ever could.